Welcome to the Reseller Show with your hosts, Andy Lawrence and Kevin Blackburn.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's wonderful to have you with us this evening. As always, welcome to the Reseller Show. My name is Andy Lawrence.
And my name's Kev Blackburn.
And we are raring to go this evening after a few minor technical mishaps or a few minutes delayed this evening, but ready to go. The audience is ready and join us. Simon is in as always. We've got Sammy in the audience and Paul as well. And we're ready to go. I think John's also on his way in as well. He'll be here any minute. I just saw a post on the Reseller, the FBA Academy group. He was asking if there is a show tonight. So I'm sure he'll be in due course. So after a slight hitch on a few fronts, we're ready to go. Kev, what have we got lined up this evening?
Good question. So we have a number of questions. I put a post out on the Reseller Show Facebook group. If you guys ever want any questions, any topics, anything discussing on the show at all, we'll cover absolutely anything. You can email us anytime at what's our email address, Andy?
Our email address, Kev, is live@resellershow.com. Is that right?
That's the one, yeah. And so you can send a question in anytime for that. And also you can jump into the Facebook group. The community is there for us all just to interact, and you can shoot any questions. So I did that tonight. I asked if there was any questions. So there's a number of questions on prep services, warehouse, the prep and things inside the warehouse, as well as a number of other couple of questions. So there should be a jam-packed show once again, Andy. I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes.
As always, so am I. Okie. Well, let's get kicking off then with some news. As always, at the beginning of the show, we're going to chat about some news. And the one big thing that came up that Simon shared in the Reseller Show group was a probe that has been launched into Amazon Germany, which is quite interesting. It's a Telegraph post that has happened into the treatment of third-party sellers in Germany. Very interesting that it is specifically Germany. I don't know why specifically Germany, but yeah, it's looking closely at factors that may be disadvantaging sellers, such as contract clausing, restricting lawsuits against the tech giant, and rules around the blocking and closing a seller account. So I guess they're looking into the fair play of how fair Amazon's rules and regulations are for third-party sellers. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that and whether it has a knock-on effect in the UK and the rest of Europe. What do you think, Kev?
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't really know an awful lot of information about all this, to be honest. I'm not entirely sure what it is. It looks like the competition regulator has launched an investigation. The thing is, with Amazon, they're so big, they're so massive. There's so many sellers now. I wouldn't even be able to tell you how many sellers there. It would be quite an interesting statistic, that would be, just to know how many sellers are in Germany, for example. So I'd love to know how you actually do launch an investigation on now if there's any potential anti-competitive activity going on. Like, I'm interested to actually learn what it is that they're going to gather to do this investigation. Do you know what I mean? To work out, like, at the end of the day, it's Amazon's platform, it's Amazon's baby, it's Amazon's machine, which means, if they deem one seller to, I'm going to give the sales to this seller because he's got better metrics, he's got better performance, all the rest of it, then I need more information, to be honest. It's it'd be interesting to see what comes of this. Obviously, if this is happening in Germany, somebody in the UK may have picked the rears up and what's this all about? Can we launch something here as well? Can we launch something in America and all these things? So who knows? Maybe the government just trying to get involved somewhere.
There's a snippet here that is quite interesting. It says German regulators say that numerous complaints have been received from sellers on Amazon about the way the company gathers information on products in order to build their own and steal a march on competitors. Now, this is definitely something I've heard about in the past, rumors. I don't know how true they've been, but certainly in the past, I've heard that if you have done particularly well and are showing very good metrics on a particular product, and Amazon doesn't have it themselves, and again, this is just anecdotal, I've heard in the past, once you raise your head over a certain limit, Amazon pay attention and they're thinking, okay, we haven't got this, but this guy's doing really well, and they can see that in their data. So I've heard that all of a sudden these people's suppliers are getting onto them saying, I can't supply you anymore. Amazon have come to us and offered us the best possible deal. They're going to take all of our stock, providing that we don't sell it to anyone else. So Amazon will actually come in and sideswipe the people that were doing well on Amazon and basically take it for themselves. Now, as I say, it's anecdotal. This is what I've heard through rumors, and how true this is, I don't know, but it does ring true with this probe and with this investigation. So it does sound interesting that they may have possibly be using third-party sellers' data to their own benefit, which is obviously a little bit unfair. So yeah, that may actually improve on it.
Yeah, I mean that's a bit, I think that is a little bit grey there. I mean, that's not, it's not good practice really. But then again, it's not something that I agree with, but I can imagine that happening. It's like this whole thing that happened with Facebook. They've got so much information on us as people. They've got so much data on groups of people now, what we like, what we don't like. Of course, in the public eye, they're going to be all like, yeah, we don't do anything with this data. But we all know that they do, and as soon as Amazon see a seller, they see Andy. Oh, he's now selling $1 million a month off this particular product. And we can see that he's potentially getting it from this supplier, or he's making this amount of money. Amazon have got such a big budget, which will dwarf any of ours. They could just override you. And what could you do? What is it? I don't think there's an awful lot you could do. So I think it's we just got to keep our heads focused on our goals, our business goals, and then we'll just see how things go and see how things pan out.
Yeah, you're right, Kev. I don't think there is actually anything that we could do about it, regardless of whether it happens or not, or whether it goes on. I mean, that's what it comes down to essentially. Is it's an interesting read, and it would be interesting to see what happens. And apparently, Paul says that the UK looking closely on the outcome to see if it also they may take action as well. So it may be something that gets investigated in the UK as well. So. Yeah, we'll just have to keep on top of it and see what happens. It'd be interesting anyway. But as you say, if it's their company, I'm not entirely sure what rules apply there if they have their own contracts and you have to sign a contract. But maybe there are some laws to say you can't make incredibly unfair contracts and make people abide by these rules. But yeah, let's wait and see. It'd be interesting to see if Amazon have anything to say about it, or whether they're going to.
I think the last point on this, I think the thing that makes it a little bit not right is the fact that they can see all your data, they can see all the information on your account, and then if they use that to take advantage and basically push you out, that's a little bit borderline. It's not like because this happens all the time. Let's say, for example, I'm doing some product research or something, and you see a particular product that is a high ticket or a high selling product, or you see a range of products doing really, really well. That's what private label is. Everybody's trying to compete with one another to make the best product. But this is slightly different in the fact that if Amazon are using your information out of your account, your business, and they're using that to their advantage, you could argue that's a little bit grey. It's a little bit black, that.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a bit of a grey area, but yeah, let's see what happens in the future. Right, so let's crack on with some questions. I've got one lined up already, Kev. Well,
Sure.
it's a question, but already got the answer. But I thought it was worth chatting about here, just simply because there is, in fact, Simon, who's in the audience today, has given us a conclusive answer on this, and it's to do with expiry dates on beauty products, because John actually had a query about expiry dates, and he's saying he was asking, what do people do when Amazon asks you for an expiry date for a product but doesn't have an expiry date on it? And Stephen actually jumped in and said, look for a symbol of a pot or a jar with an open lid, and that should have a number inside, i.e. 24M means it will be 24 months. The product will be okay for that time. So then he would then just put the expiry date 24 months from the date that he lists it, which makes sense. But for things without a date on, what do you choose? Well, Simon came back because he actually checked the Czech Cosmetics website, and there was quite a conclusive statement on there that actually says cosmetic products which shelf life is less than 30 months must be marked with a best before date according to common regulations in most countries. Such products can no longer meet safety requirements as soon as the expiry date has been passed. It's not mandatory, however, to have such labeling for cosmetics products with a shelf life that exceeds 30 months. So it stands to reason that if a product does not have an expiry date on, it must exceed 30 months. So therefore, you can just stick a random date on there. And to be honest, if you haven't sold it in 30 months, something's up, isn't it, ultimately? So that's a nice answer to that. If you're listing beauty products, it's asking for an expiry date. There's no expiry date. You can safely assume if it's come from a reliable source, then it's going to be longer than 30 months. So just stick a nice long date on there for yourself, and you can probably quite safely move on with that to know that you're making sure you haven't just made it up, and you haven't got that nagging feeling something might happen down the road. So have you got anything else to add to that little point there?
No, I mean, Steve made a good point there. Some products do have the 24M and things, but I think you hit the nail on the head there. If you don't want to be, if you've got a product in stock for 30 months, there's an issue at that point. It's most likely cost you a fortune in terms of long-term storage fees as well. So for us, what I would say, and this is something that we do, whether I should be saying this, but we're all friends here. So what we do is we're not actually all that strict when it comes to expiry dates. Like, we're not like, the best way I can describe it is in our quality control systems, we've got to be very strict on the labeling. We're going to make sure that label is right for that product, because that means something significant. Like if you label product A with product B, that's going to cause a significant problem for you, because a customer's going to be like, what the hell is this? With an expiry date, let's say you pick any product up and it says, what's the expiry date? The chances are it's going to be some point in the future. So I wouldn't even, and this is what we literally do, we wouldn't even spend our time, whether it's 5 seconds, 10 seconds, to try finding it, where's the expiry date, or it's that, to put it in. Because I think this is, I may have said this on a previous reseller show, but I'm always looking at how I do one thing is how I want to do everything. So if I'm spending 10 seconds to try finding the date on this product somewhere, then I want that to be the system. So we're going to have to do that on everyone. And if I'm going to do 10 seconds doing that with one product, 10 seconds times 10,000, that's a long time spent on something that really doesn't really matter on the grand scheme of things. Because the chances are any product that you purchase, it should be at least within, the expiry date must be at least like 6, 12 plus months, like that, you would think so, which means, in a part of the system in terms of, depending on what your system is, depending on what your business actually is. For us, we're always in and out very quickly. After 3 months, we're questioning why is it in there, which means if we've got a product that goes out of date in 10 months, it's long gone before then. So we are, I guess, we're not as strict on finding the particular date to get it really accurate, because I don't think it's actually necessary to spend that time. That's the level of detail that we try to focus on in the operations, just to try cutting time.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. I mean, that was pretty much the answer I gave in the group at the time, is that if I can't find a date, then usually I would put a random date in the future that suits me, just usually 12 months or so, something like that, maybe 18 months. But yeah, I mean, it's nice to have a conclusive reply from Simon that says that basically it's going to be long if it hasn't got one already. So you can probably absolutely carry on in that respect, just put one in the future and move on. As you say, it's not worth spending too much time over, and I don't think it's certainly not going to get any repercussions from that, because ultimately you're putting something that is almost certainly going to be correct, at least at that point, if not further away. So you're not going to get any repercussions, and certainly if there is any issues, it's usually going to go back to the manufacturer anyway, rather than the actual end seller. So yeah, wouldn't think that's a problem, and certainly nicely rounded up by yourself, Kev. So shall we move on to another one?
Yeah, let's move on. There was a question, like I said, I just put out on the Facebook group just previously, saying, does anybody have any questions? And there was a couple of questions that came in. The first one was from, I believe it was Anne. Let me just quickly check it. It was Anne, yes. Anne basically asked, scaling up, pros and cons of a prep service or warehouse. Many thanks. What do you think about that, Andy? Warehouse versus prep service.
Okay, so is it? Let me just have a quick line. I want to catch up and so I can read the questions specifically. Any questions for tonight's show? Okay, and scaling up, pros and cons of a prep center or warehouse. Okay, so is it prep center versus warehouse, or I'm not.
I assume so. The pros and cons of a prep service or a warehouse. Would you, what's the pros to a prep service? What's the cons to a prep service? What's the pros to a warehouse? What's the cons to a warehouse?
That's fair enough. I mean, it's quite an open subject. There's plenty of pros and cons for both. Obviously, if you are looking to get your own warehouse, there's obvious costs involved. There's issues with rents and contract lengths and repairing rents and full repairing leases and all this. I assume, Kev, when you got your warehouse, you went through all the fun and games of trying to figure out all the small print about full repairing leases and all this. I mean, I know that you've got a pretty decent landlord over there, and you may not have gone into that much detail, but there are certain things that is very good to know actually for the future. If you are looking at leases and you have a lease that's been made up by a solicitor or something like this, you can get what's called full repairing leases, which means once you sign on the dotted line, however much you agree to, if the roof starts leaking or there's a major issue with that building, you are responsible to fix that and pay for it. And a lot of people have got into trouble through these sort of situations where they've taken something on board, they haven't read and fully understood the situation. And sometimes they can be in a period property or something like this, and the landlord says, there's a problem with the roof, you need to get the roof you need to get a new roof, and it's under your care at the moment, so you need to put a new roof because you have a full repairing lease at the moment, and it will cost them £25,000. And they're like, what? So, well, you signed a contract, I'm afraid that's what's going on. So it's important to know these sort of things, and if there is something like this, it's a very good idea to have a proper look at it and a bit of negotiation before you agree to anything. Say, okay, I'm not entirely comfortable with this. If you do want a full repairing lease, I'm going to say that I want a limit to a maximum of £2,000 on any one claim in any 1 year, and that I want that in the contract, for example. And they would say that's fair enough, and they do that. And so they couldn't lump you with a terrible scare like that and have a a very difficult thing to come across like that. But, these things do happen, so it's important. So that's a very long-winded way of saying there can be issues with contracts and leases and things to have a look into if you're renting a warehouse. That's one thing. A prep center, you don't have any of that. It's a lot easier. You just send it to a prep center and they'll deal with it for you. Obviously, that's going to mean you don't have the capital investment of a warehouse. You haven't got to worry about leases. You haven't got to worry about your landlord in 3 years' time putting up your rent and saying, for the next 3 years, I want an extra 30% more rent. And then you're like, wow, I spent all this time getting this warehouse nice. What do? Do you accept it, or do you just find somewhere else? There's all these different things that you've got to bear in mind that could potentially happen if you're renting a space like that. And you haven't got that in a prep center. You've got none of those headaches. You literally send your stock there, they deal with it for you, and then they send it on. So that could be a con of the warehouse and definitely a pro for the prep center. I mean, where do we stop? We could carry on. I guess one of the main weak points of a prep center, you could say, is that if it's a particularly popular prep center and there's a lot of people sending stuff there, it has been known for some websites to get to know this address and realize there's an awful lot of their stock going there, and they might identify it as somewhere they don't want to send stock anymore. And so it could flag up as somewhere that if you are putting that address into the website, you may get your orders deleted. I think it has to be quite a popular prep center and have a lot of people hammering one particular site with the same address. So I think it's an extreme case, but it's a possibility that it might happen at some point. Do you want to take over, Kev? There's probably another 10.
It's
minuses.
Yeah, it's an epic conversation. I literally recorded a video early. It's 33 minutes long, just talking the pros and cons of a warehouse versus a prep service, and I didn't even cover half the things that that we could cover. And because the thing is, it all really depends for me what it is that you want to do. Like, if it all depends what your goals are really, because prep service versus a warehouse, they've both got cons, they've both got massive positives. Me personally, I went into a warehouse. I definitely don't regret going into a warehouse. If I had the choice between a warehouse and a prep service, my honest answer is I would do the same thing. I would go into a warehouse. I can understand, and I do understand why people go into prep services. It all really depends on what it is that you want to do. So some huge positives from a warehouse point of view that I can just share with you is the fact that it is your space, it is your system. You create the rules, you create the process, you create everything that goes on in that warehouse. Whereas a prep center, you are a guest. You are basically playing by their rules. Which means if their rules aren't as good as your potential rules, or if their quality control system, or they could have, because you are not actually looking at your products, you're not touching your products, you're not getting anything, which is a positive in itself. Like, you're not having to deal with all the prep and things, but it comes with the negative, with the fact that the quality control might not be quite as good as yours. It might be slower than what you could do. There's many things that we could actually touch on this. Ultimately, I think it does come down to you as an individual, what your goals are. Me, as my personality, my expertise, my history going in, being an engineer, coming from a production plant, a steel works, it made sense for me to go into a warehouse because I've got experience with sort of the layout of warehouse, systemizing warehouses and things, because that's very similar to what I was involved in. But I can also understand that people don't want the headache of employees and everything that comes along with the employees, with pensions and holidays and holiday pay. And, with the prep service, you pay in proportion to what you use it. So like, if you decided, I'm just going to have a month away or something, you're not going to pay anything. Whereas if you got a warehouse and you just went, I'm just not going to do anything this month, you're still going to have the fixed costs that are there. So there's many pros and cons that we could discuss. It's really, really up to you. I think the biggest takeaway when we talk about warehouse versus prep service, in my mind, I want to encourage everybody to see this business as in a reselling business, whether it is wholesale, whether it is online arbitrage, whether it is retail arbitrage. I want to promote seeing it as a business, not just like a side hustle in your living room, in your bedroom. Because the reality is, because I do believe, just from my personal experience and seeing people in the community, people can quit the jobs and make this into a business. Which, if you've got a business doing this, you want to get it. You want to separate the house to where you're packaging products. If that is a prep service, great. You're completely hands off. It completely outsources everything day one. That's a massive pro. Like, anybody that's not sold anything ever could literally start this business model and not touch any product ever. Just enroll straight into a prep service, done with, which is great. Having said that, you're paying before you've really sold the product as well, because everything's got like a per unit charge. So we could talk. It's such a big conversation. It really is a big conversation to have. It ultimately, you've got to ask yourself what your goals are. You know, what it is that you ultimately want to do. But I would say you've got to have either one of each. Like, you've got to either go to a prep service or go to a warehouse and make that your goal for the next 12 months. Like, how am I going to do it? I'm going to either get into a prep service right away and I'm going to make that happen, or I've got ambition to be in a warehouse. And just like I did, being in your own warehouse allows you to start a prep service, for example, which gives you options in terms of multiple streams of income and etc. as well. So it's a great topic. I'd be interested to know from anybody that's listening to this back, watching this live, what your goals are. Share it. Where do you want to be? Your prep service? Do you want to be in the warehouse? But everybody needs to be striving for those, because at that point, you're working on a business, which is that's the goal here.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, the question was quite about scaling up, and I think that hits the nail on the head. You've got to decide what you're looking for in your overall goals, like you said, Kev, and find those bottlenecks, which is what you're always talking about. If you've not got enough space in your house and you're slowing yourself down because you don't have a correct and efficient preparation area to send stuff to Amazon, then you need to either use a prep center or find a warehouse, because you need the space to be able to take more stuff in, ideally be able to receive pallets, and to be able to break pallets down, have other areas, have a shipping out area, have a goods in area, and have a nice big area where you can prep stuff and keep things moving. And ultimately, as Kev said, if there is an inefficiency, then you're losing money. So you need to have a think about your process and how best to do that. And if that is a prep center, then great. If you can find a good prep center that you can rely on, that's the key, because obviously you are giving away quite a bit of control to a prep center, and you have to ensure that the people that are handling your goods on your behalf have got you've got your back, really, in terms of looking after your stock and making sure it goes up to the warehouse correctly, because you are giving away an element of control in that respect. So yeah, I mean, you could go on for ages. Business rates.
It could be a whole show just talking about this. It's such a big, but it's such an exciting topic as well, though, because that is, like I say, it is an exciting thing, because that's the brilliant thing about what we're doing with Amazon or with eBay, because warehouse, for example, you could start to do fulfilled by merchant. You can put, you can have warehouse open days. There's a huge conversation to have with this. I love this, to be honest. I love this conversation.
Yeah, ultimately, if you're scaling up, if you want to scale your business, you're making X amount of money, you want to move on, you have to scale your business. And if that means you need more products, you need more money, you need more space to be able to deal with that product, and you need more storage, and that all comes ultimately to a warehouse. There's a reason why that is a big step. I know your brother-in-law's just finally made that step, and I think he's been trying to for a long time, and he's probably hit that bottleneck and banging on the roof of that bottleneck because he's been struggling to find a warehouse in his local area. And I think he had that issue, but you need to move on. You need to have that space before you can get over that hump and out the other side. And I'm sure his business will grow massively now he's got the appropriate premises.
Huge,
so.
Definitely. You mentioned it there about the bottlenecks. It is at every stage there is bottlenecks that you'll experience, and one of the first things that you'll experience is the fact that you run out of space in your house, because a house is a house; it's not a warehouse. Your living room and your bedrooms and your hallways, they're not designed to carry big boxes. I remember, squeezing through my hallways just to try squeezing through all the boxes that were there, because it's just not designed for that type of work. But I believe everybody that's here, a part of the Reseller Show community, I think we all have big ambitions. I think everybody here has a goal of either moving over to a prep service and then a warehouse. You can go start off in a prep service, get that away from you as quickly as possible, free up some time to allow you to scale up, and then as you're building your business, you can just stop your prep service. You can I'm only talking from our prep service. There's no contract. There's no once you start a prep service, then you're in the prep service for 12 months. If you start with a prep service, 6 months later, you've been looking for a warehouse, because these things take time. You've got to find the warehouse. You've got to make sure it's appropriate for your budget, the size. There's so many things that go involved in actually getting in the door, which all takes time. Which means if you are sort of limiting your growth by just riding it out at your house, it might be worth to just jump out onto a prep service to give you that fresh jump again, that fresh clear that bottleneck so you can get to that next level.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, if it's too much of a jump, and if in your local area you can't get a warehouse for less than £1,000 a month, and certainly down my end, warehouses are very expensive. It's either nothing at all, or it's a fully fledged commercial property, which is designed for quite a lot more than you would actually need it for, and it starts at 1,000 and goes up to 1,500. Maybe there's a middle ground there. Maybe that you can rent a garage from somebody just to get that extra bit of space. You could run a worktop along the one side of the garage and have the rest of it as storage, and then go all the way up to the roof. That might be enough just to get you onto the next leg and be able to scale up, and you can put pallets in there, and that might be enough just to earn that bit more money to bridge the gap between the two extremes. So there's always something that can be done. And a lot of farms as well, they're not getting as much as they used to out of their traditional farming methods, and they're diversifying and changing their storage barns into properly self-sufficient units as well these days. So maybe you can ask around and find these sort of locations. They're usually great access. You can usually get trucks in and out, and they've chopped up the massive barns into smaller units, and they have their own electricity and water. And so there are other options that you might be able to look into. But yeah, the trick is just to look and keep your ear to the ground and ask people, because sometimes they're not always advertised. Sometimes you just happen to know a guy that knows a guy. I said, oh yeah, my friend said he's just taken a unit up at so and so. They've got a few spare, and then suddenly you're in. So yeah, there's always options, but ultimately, if you need the space, you're not going to move on until you've got that space to be able to do that. So
yeah. And like Paul just said in the chat, he said, I think he needs to go into a prep service to start with, maybe a warehouse further down the line. But the prep service, it does need to be a good prep service. I can't stress that highly enough. We are, when me and Kyle, because I know how important it is to get your products in and out. I know how important it is to get the products right. And if you've got a prep service that, and I don't know of any, I can't tell you any sort of reputations and things, but if you've got a prep service that loses products, damages products, doesn't find products, doesn't ship products, you're chasing up all these things. You know, you got to get yourself into a prep service that actually cares about its customers and cares about its performance ultimately. And that's why, you know, I can only speak with, and I do this with all my businesses. You know, you've got to set some core values in your business, and all our core values in our prep service are all 100% customer focused, because it is that important. Because you're dealing with people's money, you're dealing with people's lives. Like, people are trusting you, people are wanting that. A lot of the times we start these businesses, like these reselling businesses, as a side hustle with the ambition of getting out into working for yourself, like that stepping stone into living the dream. So you can't take that lightly. You can't, you know, if I ever read anybody sort of making any comment of my prep service has lost a product, you know, it makes me incredibly angry towards that prep service, because I'm thinking to myself, hang on a minute, there's somebody put an incredible amount of trust in you, and we're talking with a lot of money. Some orders are £500, £1,000, whatever it is, a lot of stock. You can't just be like, oh, we've lost this product. I mean, that's just not good enough at all.
No. To be honest with you, having gone to your warehouse, Kevin, witnessed how you treat your prep service clients, and it really is obvious to me that it is just an extension of your own business. It's like they are borrowing your team, and everything that you do with your products is, you know, these people are able to borrow exactly the same people. They're doing the same thing for them as they're doing for your business, and that really shows that you treat them in that way, that you're just basically doing as good a job in for their stock as for your own stock. So, you know, I think that says a lot, and certainly it's obvious to me that you care a lot about making sure it all works and it's structured well, and it's certainly a good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, you know, we've this year alone, we've shipped now over 50,000 units from prep service clients, and you know, you don't get to that sort of level by not doing it correctly, by not caring, because you know the reality is, if you have if you experience a bad experience for the first time, you're like, oh, all right, we can maybe learn from this. The second time, you're like, hang on a minute, something's got to go here. Like, we can't put up with this. So, you know, so we've now shipped thousands of products, which we're very proud of. Literally today, I've been doing a year in review for our customers, because I like to communicate with it. Because the one thing I will add, which is a sort of a weird thing, really, because I've always seen my products since 2015. I've always seen what we've sold, but it's fascinating when we saw, like, with a number of the events and things this year, people coming in that are prep service clients, like, it's so strange to see my shelf and see my product, you know, because I can see that being a bit strange. Like, you never touch your products. It's like magic. You just like press a button and then that's it. You make a sale.
Yeah, it's crazy. I must admit, you know, talking about it now, it does make perfect sense. If you are scaling and you're looking for the next steps, I definitely think it's a good place to get into the prep service first. Get your scaling up first, and then you know, use that money to reinvest into your business for things like warehouses. Makes perfect sense to step it in that direction. So, yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely good advice there. So why don't we move on to the next question? Have you got one lined up there, Kev?
Yeah, there's another question here from Daniel. Daniel, great question here, Daniel. He said, the do's and don'ts of prep for FBA. When, what, and how much to poly or bubble wrap? How much padding inside the shipping boxes? Is it worth using fragile tape for the shipping boxes? So, Daniel, great question. Fantastic question to talk about the process of shipping products, Andy.
Yeah. I mean, it would be handy to have more specific questions. The do's and don'ts, or
just general. Then, I mean, a general answer, I guess, would be, you know, it's all on the Amazon's website. Everybody, you know, they give you the guidance and things. However, you know, I guess we could just share what we do in our day-to-day operations, I guess.
I mean, yeah, sure. What you need to be sure of, in my mind, is that things are packed to the point where you're not going to get your stock damaged. We all know, in fact, it's probably a good exercise if you have UPS come and pick up your stuff. Just hide round the curtain for a little while and watch them as they take it from your possession and put it in the van, and look at the loving care that they take when they look like they're taking a throw in at the halfway line with your box into the back of the van and unceremoniously lob it into the van. So you've got to be sure that you pack your box. It's going to take a bit of a beating because sometimes they're under pressure, they're in a rush, and your box is going to get lobbed around. So if you've got items, try not to leave them rattling around in there, because if they're able to move around, there's more chance they'll get damaged. So make use of what Amazon called dunnage, which is basically stuff that you stick in the bits in between your stock items. So whether that's brown paper wrap, whether it's bubble wrap, or even just leftover plastic bags, whatever you use, make sure you keep everything secure. Tape your boxes correctly. If you're sending in books, get loads of packaging brown tape on the corners and on the seams to reinforce the boxes. What else? The drop test. If you've got something fragile, have you ever done the 1 meter drop test, Kev? Have you seen that video from Amazon?
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
So you've got to bubble wrap your item so that if you were to stand up and hold your hand out, you won't be able to see it here. You hold your hand out from a standing height of about 1 meter. You must be able to drop that item from 1 meter and it fall on the ground and not break. So that's a good guideline because yes, it may be, I don't know this, but it may be when it gets to Amazon and your box being opened, it might be that box gets turned upside down and tipped out, So if you have got slightly damageable items, you need to make sure that they are packaged correctly. So what other tips have you got over there, Kev?
I think you covered a lot of it there. I think the do's and don'ts for prep. Make sure that one of the things that we did was there is the downloads SKU. Whenever you're creating a shipment, there's a little button that says, I think it's below the button of working on shipment. It says download SKU. So what we do is we download that and we paste it into a Google Sheet. And what it will do, it will print out your shipment. Okay, it give you all the details of the shipment. It will give you all the products. It will give you how many units of, because you've created this shipment and now you're looking at what you need to do. So it'll say what the units are. It will say what prep is required. Anything that says bubble wrap, it obviously needs to be bubble wrapped. Anything that needs to be taped, etc. It all says on there. So my best advice would be, because it's easy just to sort of because it's like a repetitive thing and you're prepping all the time. It could be quite easy just to incorrectly prep things, and that's ultimately what Amazon are gonna give you a telling off for. So the first and foremost, you've got to make sure that you prep correctly as per what they want. If it needs bubble wrapping, you need to bubble wrap it. Like Andy said, drop test, make sure it's plenty of bubble wrap. I use the download SKU because then that's a record of everything that we've done. Where the girls come and tick it, they tick it off as part of the quality control system. We tick off making sure that, yes, we've put 3 units in this box and it's in box 1 and then box 2, whatever. It's been bubble wrapped. Everything has that second eye. Yes, this has been bubble wrapped. Yes, it's got the right label on. All these things. So that download is a really, really good key thing that you could do. You could just print it out and then you can, at any time, I'd be able to tell you what our shipment 67 was in 2015, because I can go all the way back to that shipment, and this is what we've just done in our operations to keep on top of everything, just in case Amazon do come back and say this wasn't bubble wrapped, and we can say yes, it was, and we go one step further now. We actually do photos of products as well, right, and photos of the boxes. Not all the time, we're not like absolutely all the time, but we do take spot checks of things and we do take photos of things, because you can have a scenario where Amazon will say this won't bubble wrapped and we're like, it really was. I don't know what they're doing at that end. We don't have the control of that end. But like Andy said there, Daniel, in terms of the padding inside, make sure that your products don't move. Anything like if you've seen UPS, like Andy said, they literally just throw it in. If it doesn't fit, they'll make it fit, and they'll make it fit in their van at all costs, even if it means running, jump, and backflip into it or something to make it go fit and shut that door. Is it worth using fragile tape? Yeah, we put just a line of fragile tape on the top as well, just to sort of say, if Amazon ever said anything, we can then come back. That's just another weapon in our arsenal to say, well, it had fragile tape in as well, because I don't want anybody ever coming back saying, well, we didn't know it was fragile inside it, so we just put one strip down the center of it just to make people aware.
Yeah, good idea, and I love that download SKU option. That's a good idea. And there was a question that came up on the FBA Academy group this week, actually, about I think was it might have even been one of the Simons that actually missed off an item in his package. He missed it off the list, in his consignment list, and now it hasn't shown up at the warehouse. Now, I think he can't remember which one it was in, and this, that, and the other. And if he downloaded his SKU list, then that would have been able. He would have be able to go back to that and double check it. So that would have been a very useful record for him. It doesn't help him now, but in retrospect, that's a very useful process to have in place, because you then can check that back and see exactly what you put into what box. And that will help you pin things down if there is any query later on at the warehouse. So that was Simon. Whichever Simon that is in the chat that was the one that had the issue. So don't beat yourself up. He was threatening to slap himself about that, because yes, it's an easy error when you're shipping a lot of stuff. It's easy to miss something off a list somewhere and lose track of it. So yeah, that's a handy tip. So definitely. Yeah, in fact, probably deserves a golden nugget, doesn't it? Got to get one in there at some point, haven't we? Right.
So important, though. It is so important, for sure.
For sure. Right. What are we moving on to now? Have we got time for a quick one? We're getting up on the 50 minutes mark again, Kev. It goes quick, doesn't it, when you're having fun?
Yeah, I was just having a quick look to see, was there anything in the chat that we've missed here? Don't think so. Yeah, just Simon just mentioned that the reseller website, the Reseller Show website, isn't working. It's coming up with an error, so we will sort that out. Thank you for letting us know, Simon. Much appreciated. We will get that sorted out to make it sure it doesn't happen again. I don't know what the cause of that is, but
I'm sure.
Just thinking, is there any other questions?
I don't think so. I haven't seen any. I think that was pretty much covering it for this evening.
I think that is pretty much it.
Yeah, I think so. Well, it's not a bad place to end, because, as I say, we're nearly up to the hour mark anyway. So I think we've pretty much covered it all this evening. So we may as well wrap it up. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, to all of you in the audience for coming along and chipping in where necessary. It's always nice to have you along and have your company whilst we record this, and everyone at home for listening on whatever device you are. And if you're rating it and giving us 5 stars, thank you for doing that. We appreciate all of those. It helps us get the word out. So thank you for doing that ahead of time. Don't forget, you can catch us on Spotify, you can catch us on Stitcher, and on iTunes as well. So whatever your favorite service is, just search for the Reseller Show and you'll find us there. You can go all the way back to the first one and see all the different ones are up to number 8 now. This is episode 8. So yeah, it's good to have you along. And don't forget, if you've got any questions, you can get hold of us on the Reseller Show Facebook group and ask a question there. You can email us live at theresellershow.com and we will feature your question. And obviously you can join us in the chat live if you want to, by going to live at how do you go to that? What is it? resellershow.com/live. That's the one. And you can sign
That's
up
the
and
one.
be in the audience at the same time.
Yeah, I was just having a quick look at the old the podcast. Then we did nearly reach 100 listeners, which was a nice milestone. I'm just going to have a quick look just to see whether we actually hit it, because was that 98? Was that 90, Andy? Which would have been a nice little celebration for us. But I love this show. I really, really do. It's great to do this on a Monday evening. For you guys that join in live, I really do appreciate your time. It's fantastic just to connect with you guys and just have a casual chat. Everything to do with reselling. It's very exciting. We're coming up towards Christmas and a new year. It's a very exciting period, because we've all put in so much work for this year, but now we can reap the rewards of Q4, but then we can just like relax, celebrate a little bit, and go again for 2019. And looking forward to every week we do this show.
Absolutely. It's always a good fun, and it's great hanging out with you guys for sure. So, all right, we've actually got an interesting one next week, so make sure you tune in. We've actually got a friend of mine, Mr. Lewis Wade, coming in, and he'll be popping in to talk to us about private label and importing from China, which will be really interesting chatting to him about that. So look forward to that. And so stay tuned for that one. It'll be a really interesting interview with him. All right. Let's wrap it up then, guys. Thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to chatting with you very soon. Take care.
See you next week.
Wait.
Welcome to the Reseller Show with your hosts, Andy Lawrence and Kevin Blackburn.